Hi everyone, I'm Caroline and I'm the CEO of Comhlámh. And on behalf of Comhlámh and the End Orphanage Volunteering Working Group, I would like to welcome you all here today. As Vekra just mentioned, this webinar is being recorded, so it can be available for members of the public after. And as Vekra highlighted, only the speakers' inputs will be shown, so you yourself as a participant will not be visible. So Comhlámh is delighted to host this event in partnership with our End Orphanage volunteering campaign. For the past 10 years, we've been working with volunteer sending agencies in Ireland to create the conditions for child-safe international volunteering, linking with the global care reform movement. Today's event features expert speakers from Hope and Homes for Children, the OSCE and MECPATHs, who will discuss the connections between orphanages, international volunteering and child trafficking. It is important to remember that we'll be discussing sensitive themes around children's rights, power imbalances and trafficking throughout this webinar, and we'd just like you to be all aware of this. We'd like to thank the Communicating Europe initiative for their support with making this webinar possible, and many thanks to the staff of the Department of Foreign Affairs for their assistance throughout. We'd also like to thank Irish Aid for consistently supporting our sector's work on child-safe volunteering. So now I'm going to hand you back to Vekra, who will be moderating the event for today.
Thanks very much, Caroline, for that great introduction. So yeah, as Caroline said, we're delighted to be here today as Comhlámh and as the Comhlámh End Orphanage volunteering campaign. There's great turnout and there's people still coming in as well. And I know for the recording, there's a few people who couldn't join us. I know we have a number of teachers joining us who are busy trying to keep children in the classroom for another couple of weeks, even with the nice sunny weather out there. As Caroline said, it's a very important issue for Comhlámh, and it's a campaign that's been growing from strength to strength over the past 10 years or more. It's an event that's possible due to the Communicating Europe initiative at the Department of Foreign Affairs, which we're very grateful for. And it's also very complementary to our ongoing work with Irish Aid, who we have a long-standing relationship and a strategic partnership with. Today's event it's an opportunity to learn more about these close and troubling links between orphanages, volunteering, and child trafficking. It's also an opportunity to reflect on what has been done at a national, a European, and even a transnational level to respond to this, and to look at what needs to be done in the future and the efforts that policymakers, advocates, activists, self-advocates are doing all around the world to champion this issue. The Communicating Europe initiative, it's all about increasing awareness about the role and importance of the European Union and its institutions in our lives. So we hope that today's event will be a chance to deepen that understanding and also to be inspired to champion this issue in your lives. And obviously there's a big European moment happening in Ireland and across Europe on Friday, which is the European elections. And this is an important issue. So hopefully it'll be all on your minds as you're thinking about that. We have three excellent speakers today who are going to share expert inputs, and they'll really help to give you a clear picture of the different aspects of this issue and how they intersect. So Irina is going to speak first, coming to us from Hope and Homes for Children, and she will focus on the revised EU anti-trafficking directive and the steps that are being taken at a European level to respond to orphanage trafficking and the move towards promoting family-based care reform strategies. JP from MECPATHs will provide an overview of the reality of child trafficking in Ireland and some of the measures and responses that are really needed to keep children safe. And then Katharina from the OSCE will share a bit about their work and the research they've been involved in around strengthening child trafficking and child protection systems. And I suppose, as we said, this is the Comhlámh End Orphanage Volunteering and Care Working Group, and that theme of volunteering and the impacts and the harm caused by orphanage volunteering and the institutional care of children will permeate throughout this entire event. And we hope to inspire people to take action, and we'll be saying a bit more about how you can support this ongoing campaign and initiative towards the end of this. So thanks very much for listening to me. I'll hand you over to the experts now. So Irina is going to speak first, and as you can see there in the chat, a little bit of information about the bios of everyone has been shared. Just one thing to say is, if you have questions, the plan is there's going to be a Q&A at the end, so we've dedicated time. So we won't be asking questions to speakers during their presentation. We're going to do it afterwards as a bit more of a round table. So what I would ask is if you would maybe wait until the end of their presentation before you send a question in. And it's also, we'll just take a moment, maybe 60 seconds, for everyone to share any reflections or any thoughts, and you can just throw them into the chat and we'll compile them all together and be able to ask as many of those questions as possible to the speakers at the end. So like I said, feel free to use the chat function and also introduce yourselves as you go as well. So I'm going to disappear from the spotlight now, and we're going to hand you over to Irina. So yeah, just again, thank you all very much, and just to say as well, to thank the members of the End Orphanage Volunteering Working Group who are joining as well, and their organisations, Tear Fund Ireland, Nurture Africa, See Beyond Borders Ireland, and Mission Cara, as well as the 45 organisations who've endorsed the campaign. So thank you very much, and I will hand you over to Irina.
Thank you, Akram, for inviting me as a speaker to this webinar, and for choosing this very very important topic. I'm Irina, senior EU advocacy advisor at Hope and Homes for Children. Hi everyone. Hope and Homes for Children works to end institutionalization of children globally, and to make sure that that all children grow up in safe and caring families, and when being institutionalized, that they are back to families. First slide, please, with our vision and mission, which you could see. And you can move to the next slide, please. I will give a bit of EU background, as I was engaged with EU advocacy around the link between trafficking and institutionalization. Also previously, some years ago, I sat in the EU anti-trafficking civil society platform, then with another organization, Lumos. And I'm mentioning this just to say that back on the day, we did a lot of talking about this nexus and a lot of effort to influence the EU anti-trafficking strategy, which never happened. The link between institutionalization and trafficking was never addressed in the EU anti-trafficking strategy, despite all the meetings and talking and sitting in the platform and repeating this again and again and again. So when the EU opened its 2011 EU anti-trafficking directive for a revision, we at Hope and Homes for Children saw an opportunity to pick from this advocacy and to try to have this nexus included in the directive. You can see on the slide the directive timeline. It was was adopted very recently, namely in the last few weeks by the Parliament in April, and by the Council at the end of May. We have not seen the final text adopted by the Council yet. We are assuming it is the one adopted by the Parliament. I reached out to several permanent representations, and they all directed me to their press release, which talks about strengthened child rights. So hopefully this is indeed the final text. Next slide, please. Before I continue with advocacy and with directive, I will take another step back to briefly talk about that very link between institutions and trafficking. The way it usually goes, actually, there are four ways children can be recruited and trafficked into institutions. In some contexts, parents with vulnerable families for whom it is difficult to take proper care of their children can be targeted by a person or a group of people who have come up with the brilliant business idea to set up a so-called orphanage. They can be then convinced, and this is happening around the world, that their children will be better taken care of, that they'll live in better conditions, get access to education, etc., etc. This could be one way of doing it. Sometimes these children are an object of actual transaction. Parents could be paid, and then their child is taken away to be put in an orphanage. Why so? Why, when there are enough children in the so-called orphanage, the business owners start approaching international donors to get funding for their institution. This funding never reaches the children, and this could be very profitable ventures for their owners. Then children are also often trafficked out of institutions into other forms of exploitation, even when this is like regular, let's say so, institution which has not been set up as a business. Children are regularly targeted by traffickers and could be even convinced to run away and be helped into a better way of living, but actually trafficked. Sometimes when these child trafficked victims and unaccompanied children are saved, again they're sent back to an institution, which makes it into a vicious circle, and from the institution they can be of course re-trafficked, and finally caregivers are more at risk of exploitation and trafficking for obvious reasons. Next slide, please. Having all of this in mind and seeing an opportunity in the EU anti-trafficking directive revision, we reached out to partners and drafted a contribution with our proposals for amendments. We got 11 other organizations and networks, including some of them with specific anti-trafficking focus, such as ECPAT, and all of them endorsed the paper and also offered some additional input linked to their specific areas of work. With this paper, next slide, please. With this paper, we reached out to all the EU EU institutions, the legislation makers, the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council, and I'll speak about our engagement with them in a moment, and you can see our suggested amendments. They were linked to trafficking into institutions being added to the list of types of exploitation, the recovery of child victims should be ensured in a family and community-based environment, strengthening of the data collection action mechanisms, strengthening the protection for children at risk of or being trafficked by ensuring the collaboration between all actors and child-friendly reporting procedures, preventive measures targeting the most marginalized, including children deprived of parental care and children with disabilities, and taking a holistic approach to prevent child trafficking. As I said, we targeted the three policy and legislation makers. As at this stage, the Commission had issued its proposal for a revised directive. It was already at the Parliament. Nevertheless, we met with the Commission as well, and we explained our proposals for amendments and the logic behind them. The Commission asked us about data, whether we have data about this happening in the EU and in Europe, or is this happening mostly outside of Europe? We got the same question at the Parliament, where we met with all the key MEPs engaged with the file, the reporter, shadow reporters, or their offices, and other relevant MEPs. Again, they were very interested in the issue. All of them were willing to take it on board, but they wanted to be able to back up their proposals for amendments with data. We in both cases, we explained that there is not so much data about this happening in the EU and Europe, which is also part of the problem, as it is something that has not been much looked at, and this even more enhances our proposals for amendments. We came up with another their short paper explaining the issue of data. We found some sources, but also argumented the lack of a lot of relevant data. The Parliament included our amendments. They slightly changed the text here and there, but at at the first version of the adopted document, children in institutions and trafficking into institutions were still still in the text of the directive. Then it went to the council, and we spoke to all the 27 permanent and representations, making the case for keeping our amendments. Again, it was back with the Parliament. Again, we spoke with the office of the reporter and shadow reporters, but unfortunately, our amendments linked particularly to trafficking into institutions and institution related trafficking being added to the list of types of trafficking were not preserved. Never the less these amendments have made it to the preamble. And again, even though it is not the text of the actual directive, this is a huge breakthrough. Going back to the start and all the years of advocacy and not even being able to get this entry into the EU anti-trafficking strategy, a policy document. Now we have this sort of trafficking and particularly the specific vulnerability of children in institutions to trafficking is acknowledged, and this is the first time ever for it being publicly recognized at EU level. You can see the all the texts linked to care reform, and we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Where other relevant amendments, many of which also mirroring our amendments have been been included. Child and disability rights rights focus prevention, mentioning of children at various places, training which is child sensitive and also disability sensitive, civil society and society engagement, and others who are which are not even in this list, which makes it a strong child rights directive and a good base for further their advocacy on the topic, including during its implementation. Next slide, please. What comes next? The text will enter into force 20 days after its publication in the official journal of the EU, and member states will have up to 2 years to transpose the amended directive into national law. Moving to the implementation, as I said, there are advocacy opportunities there as well. The directive envisages appointment of national EU anti-trafficking coordinators or equivalent mechanisms who shall work with relevant civil society organizations active in the field, and their tasks shall include the carrying out of assessments of trends in trafficking in human beings. So this gives another window for getting institutionally related trafficking being captured and addressed. Also, there will be establishment of independent bodies whose role may include monitoring of the implementation and impact of anti-trafficking actions. There will be putting in place of a system for the recording, production, and provision of anonymized statistical data. Again, we can aim to get some indicators that they're linked to child victims coming from institutions, and their sorry. I didn't hear this.
Sorry, you can continue, Irina. I think just if someone could mute themselves there in the background, we'll try
Okay,
to find who it is. Sorry, continue.
that's fine. I'm almost done anyway. And there will be the development of national anti-trafficking action plans, where again we can aim to have this link addressed and including it along with some actions. And last but not least, next year will be the adoption of a new EU anti-trafficking strategy as the current one will expire, which gives us an opportunity to hopefully get this this nexus into the strategy now, when it is also included in the preamble of the directive. Next slide, please. And there are some relevant texts we might wish to look at when you get my presentation. And thank you very much again for the opportunity and your attention.
Great. Thank you very much, Irina, for sharing all that. That was fantastic. Huge amount of really rich, detailed information. And as we said, those slides will be available, and there's a huge amount of information there. And of course, Hope and Homes for Children is your organization, who have fantastic resources and blogs and updates about all these issues and more. So we're going to hand over to JP now in just a second. So as I said at the start, we'd absolutely encourage people, if they have any questions at this point or any observations, reflections, thoughts, please do put them into the chat now. And we will have time for the Q&A at the end. But please do kind of just take this opportunity. If you have any reflections or thoughts to please share them. But other than that, we're going to hand over to JP for the MECPAT's presentation. And I will, sorry, JP, are you spotlighted there? Let me just add your spotlight, and I'll remove my own, and there we go.
Thanks so much, Fikra.
I did the opposite.
You can see the presentation, Fikra.
Yeah, we can see the presentation.
Great. So thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here with everybody this afternoon. I work with an agency called MECPATS. We're a very, very small organization based out of Dublin, working with a reach across Ireland, focused specifically on child trafficking. Specifically more so on domestic trafficking. So I've been working with MECPATS for the past 8 years. I came to work in the space in Ireland following experience of working overseas, both in a voluntary capacity, but also in a project management capacity. Our work here in Ireland is far-reaching. We were initially founded 10 years ago by our colleague Mary Ryan, who's also on the call, to work with the hospitality industry to look at how the hospitality industry in Ireland was or could be interacting with child exploitation and child trafficking. Following that initial piece of engagement, it came to our attention that there was a broader need across the country to engage with other agencies who were potentially interacting with children who had been trafficked domestically or internationally. So we now work across youth and community sectors, work with the Private Security Authority of Ireland, delivering the first mandated piece of training in Ireland on the issue of child trafficking. We work across social work and social care work. We're engaged by the Child and Family Agency here in Ireland, TUSLA, to deliver training to their frontline professionals. We also work in all of the universities across social work programs, human rights law programs, and social policy programs. We've initiated a number of pieces of awareness raising and education over the past 2 to 3 years, particularly with healthcare staff who were engaging with and encountering children who were presenting with an initial need, but in further investigations revealed the extent of trafficking experiences that were being encountered there. Now, my own experience, I mentioned that I'd worked overseas and had worked as a volunteer overseas. It was my initial, I suppose, first couple of weeks in South Asia, in India, that I came into contact with a very lived or live reality of child trafficking. I did what most volunteers do, and I got lost in the city that I was working in, and I found myself in a side lane of this city. I was approached and I was offered sexual access for exploitation to children for the equivalent of 50 cents. It was that experience that really opened my eyes to, I suppose, the reality of child trafficking, and also the extent of it, how it does and can interact with many of our own lived experiences, whether we're overseas or we're here in Europe, here in Ireland. So I was engaged by MECPATS to do a little scoping piece of research to explore how the hospitality industry in Ireland was or could be interacting with child sexual exploitation. That piece of initial research really refocused the lens I had been looking through. I'd been looking at the other countries, the other children, the other people, and it became very apparent very quickly to me what we were experiencing here in Ireland was a vast exploitation of children without an accurate or correct lens being focused upon it, and that lens being child trafficking. So when we look at the screen, we're looking at the numbers of identified victims of trafficking here in Ireland from 2013 to 2023. We saw a vast increase in the numbers being identified from 2013 up to 16, and this was a point in time when I would say we had a very coordinated effort in the country. The Department of Justice was particularly well focused on the issue of trafficking. However, in 2016-17, we started to receive international reports that really spotlighted the country, that said Ireland is not doing what it should be, not doing what it could be doing, to focus on the issue of trafficking and to respond effectively and efficiently well. There was a transformation within the Department of Justice around that time, and the anti-human trafficking unit, as it was then, was dissolved. The work was absorbed into 2 pillars of policy and transparency. From my experience, that dissolution of the unit resulted in a reduction in the number of people being formally identified. And we see down as far as 2020, a time of heightened vulnerability, we saw under 40 persons being identified within the state as victims of trafficking. In 2019, we saw a UNODC research brief suggested that the numbers that Ireland was reporting upon were just the tip of the iceberg, that there were actually 50% underreporting. We've seen reports come from University of Limerick that suggest about 40 to 45% underreporting or under-identification. We had a report from the Walk Free Foundation earlier just this year that suggested that there are approximately 5,000 victims of trafficking in Ireland at present. So if we're only identifying between 40 and 50, it's very, very clear to say that our identification mechanisms are not as they should be. Now, looking at just 3 years in particular, 2020 to 2022, as our focus is on children today, just to look at I suppose the 2 years of our COVID period, 2020 and 2021, not one child was identified within the state as a victim of trafficking. When we look at 2022, we saw 5 children being identified as victims of trafficking. So over the course of 3 years, 5 children identified in the Republic of Ireland as victims of trafficking. Yet we look to our closest neighbour in the UK, and in the same time period, there were 17,000 children identified as victims of trafficking and exploitation. So for the Irish state to say 5, it's wholly inaccurate. It's doing a huge injustice to those children who are going unidentified and missed. Now, just to compare our statistics, so we're looking at a global average of all victims of trafficking being 33% in children. Across the EU is 23%, in the UK it's 47%. Yet here in the Republic of Ireland, again, we're saying an 8% average, not reflective of the reality of our colleagues working on the front lines, or indeed of our colleagues across Europe. So to bring it a little bit further into context, in that period of time, again, we had 69% of all victims self-identified as female, 31% self-identified as male, yet we only managed to identify tiny numbers of children. So 4% of all victims identified in that period of time were children, 4% versus our 33% globally, so not reflective of any type of reality at all. Back in 2020, we had a country visit from the OSCE, from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And the gentleman that came to do a research piece was Valiant Ritchie. His brief when he arrived into the country was to look at human trafficking broadly on the island of Ireland. What he discovered and uncovered was so concerning for him that the majority of his report focused specifically on children. He advised that we're not screening for them. He advised that where there are identification mechanisms in place, they're fractured, they're broken, and they're not fit for purpose. So in essence, here in the Republic of Ireland, we're quite simply not looking for these child victims of human trafficking, and Ireland is regarded as a source, destination, and transit country for child trafficking. Back in July of last year, we had a report published by UCD, by the Sexual Exploitation Research Project. This report was hard-hitting. It put into report format what we at MECPATS have been hearing for quite a long time. It was around the recruitment of children out of institutional care or state care for the purpose of sexual exploitation. The report uncovered that children are being targeted in state care. Hotel networks are being used for their exploitation. Frontline professionals are not recognizing or understanding the risks and signs of the sexual exploitation. There's ambiguity around what child trafficking is, what sexual exploitation of children looks like, and what it looks like based in the context of residential or statutory care. And it also revealed the explosion of online sexual exploitation of children over the COVID period, but also extending out into current day. So that report really put into context what we're talking about when we talk about child trafficking. Again, it was reshifting that lens, the focus. Child trafficking is very much alive here in Ireland, but our lens is very clouded when we look through it at the children that we're encountering on a regular basis. The other type of exploitation or trafficking of children here in Ireland that we're encountering so regularly is child trafficking for criminal exploitation. At MECPATS, we work with agencies that are working with children as young as 6 who are being brought into these worlds, at the age of 6, to run heroin around rural parts of Ireland. The report that came out of UL in 2016, Lifting the Lid on Greentown, focused on these children, the missed children. There was a national prevalence study which was conducted the following year, and this national prevalence study found that there were up to 1,000 children being recruited into criminal exploitation, which under domestic law here in Ireland and international law is a form of child trafficking. It found that 42% of the children were younger than 12. They were being offered access to drugs, alcohol, and status. Very difficult to leave. And I think it's important to remember when we talk about child trafficking or any type of trafficking, what we have at the core or the essence of the person who's being exploited is the vulnerability. These groups, these individuals are identifying the vulnerabilities and they're moving in to target the children. They're moving in to exploit the children and they're moving in to use them for their own benefit. And 92% of the children in this prevalence study had a familial connection. So they had been brought into worlds of criminality by somebody they knew within their own family network. Very difficult for them to exit without a formal strategy provided by the state to do so. Now, just earlier this year, we had an additional report from West Dublin, and it looked at the Drug and Alcohol Trends Monitoring System 2023, and it found that drug runners here in West Dublin were on average 8 to 10 years of age, and drug dealers, as they're so referred to in the report, were averaging 10 to 12 years of age. So when we talk about child trafficking in its broadest sense, I think it's important for us here, specifically in Ireland, to remember, to realize, and to be aware that we're talking about children on our doorsteps here. Children that are being recruited by criminal gangs and being exploited for various purposes. Now, Irina mentioned the legislation and policy here in Ireland. We have very robust pieces of legislation. We have the Child Trafficking Pornography Act, thankfully undergoing a review of title. We have our Human Trafficking Act. We have the amendments to that act in 2013. We have our Sexual Offences Act, and this is currently moving through government, being amended to the Sexual Offences and Human Trafficking Bill. There are huge changes coming down the tracks for us here in Ireland, a revised, reformed national referral mechanism, which unfortunately, despite many requests of government, is not child specific. So we're seeing again children being shoehorned into a system built for adults, and so that's going to be challenging when it finally does come out into practice. Irina touched on the European pieces of legislation that we're duty bound to adhere to here in Ireland as well. But in terms of national policy in Ireland, we have some very, again, robust pieces of policy. Our challenge in the country really is transposing them into practice. So we have Children's First, we have our Anti-Human Trafficking Action Plan from the Department of Justice, we have our domestic sexual gender-based violence policies and strategies, and we will have our national referral guidelines coming up very shortly. And especially, I think, for frontline professionals, the professionals with whom we're interacting so regularly with that need those guidelines, because at present, the vast majority of frontline staff, frontline professionals who are meeting with these children do not currently know really how to respond to or what these children look like when they present. So there's a lot of work to be done here in Ireland and of course internationally as well. So I just wanted to leave us with, I suppose, the refresher or the reminder that when we're talking about child trafficking statistics, we're looking at 33% of children, of victims being children globally. Across the EU, it's 23%. In the UK, our closest neighbour, it's 47%. And here in the Republic of Ireland, we're being advised and we're advising that it's only 8%. So thank you very much for your time, for engagement. Fiachra, Caroline and Derva, thank you very much for your generous invitation to be with everybody here this afternoon. And I look forward to some questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, JP, for that really powerful presentation. And I suppose it's one of these things where we're really seeing those connections where a lot of time as Comhlámh or as organizations involved in international development, we're looking at issues or challenges happening in other countries, and we're seeing that in fact a lot of the same dynamics and challenges and issues are, as you said, happening right on our doorstep. And you know, a lot of these responses, whether it's European or international, they do require a very kind of coordinated response. So again, I'd encourage people to share thoughts and reflections, and we're compiling them all together. But now I will hand over to Katerina. So if you're okay to share your screen, and I will disappear back into the background.
Thank you, Fiachra, and thank you, Comhlámh, for inviting us, the OECE, to the webinar today. It is very great to be here and also to see some familiar faces from the child rights, child protection and child trafficking community. I'm going to share my screen so that I can start. I only have a couple of slides. Okay, so what I would like to talk about is our activities and our work around the topic of the nexus between the institutionalization of children and child trafficking. But of course, I do not want to repeat everything what Irina already so fantastically presented. I instead would like to focus on a very concrete issue that is coming more and more up, and where we see a momentum developing. And this is around the exploitation of children in the context of orphanages. One of the nexuses that have been highlighted by Irina, the trafficking of children into orphanages to satisfy the demand that volunteers from the West create to come to these volunteers. If I may, I would like to use just 1 minute to speak about the organization for those who are not familiar with the OECE. So I'm working at the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe in the Office of the Special Representative and Coordinator for Combating Trafficking in Human Beings. As it relates to the OECE is an international organization, the largest regional organization comprised of 57 OECE participating states, ranging from Canada, Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, Ukraine, Russia, and we maintain very close relationships with what we call partners for cooperation, that we have in Northern Africa, our so-called MED partners, Middle East, and then we maintain also relations with our partners for cooperation in Asia. And we have a so-called comprehensive approach to security, meaning we look at economic, political, military, and environment and human rights, whereas, of course, human trafficking we consider a cross-dimensional concern and issue. When it comes to our office was established in 2003. This is where our action plan was established. And our key mandate in one sentence is to assist all OSCE participating states in implementing effective responses and policies to combat human trafficking, for which we have a wide toolbox available. And with commitments, we refer to, for example, Ministerial Council decisions, where I already want to come to the topic of today's discussion. Of course, we have a long-standing history on working on child trafficking, and the commitments that were given to us come from, of course, the action plan. Then the action plan was added by an addendum in 2005 that focused on child trafficking. And then we had two following Ministerial Council decisions in 2017 and 2018. These Ministerial Council decisions we followed up with two publications, one in 2021 on establishing national focal points for child victims of trafficking. The idea is here to facilitate communication and coordination across countries in case of foreign child victims of trafficking. And then, of course, our flagship publication from earlier on the need to address child trafficking within child protection systems. And I think this is where the topic of today's meeting comes in. Of course, when we speak about child trafficking within child protection system, that includes the need for care reform, the need for deinstitutionalization, because it has been known for a very long time that institutional care settings expose children to all forms of violence, exploitation, but also trafficking. And we have heard about the four nexuses from Irina, so I will not go into those again. So in terms of our activities that we have done so far and that we are planning to do, as I said, it is of course not new that as an office we work on child trafficking, but our focus on the nexus between the institutionalization of children and child trafficking is really something that we have recently started to focus on. So what I'm going to speak about on my next slides is a LinkedIn research that I conducted in the context of orphanage trafficking, then our planned engagement with parliamentarians, an event series that we are currently in with the Council of Baltic Sea States, and then some of the regional workshops that we are planning across the OSCE region. So in terms of the LinkedIn research, this is the key theme of my presentation today. So over the last couple of weeks, months, I have dedicated significant time to look at online reviews on orphanages in various countries across Africa and Asia. And on a personal note, why I did this, I was for a work meeting in Kenya, and I added some free days at the end of my trip. And the closer I came to the coast, the more orphanages, children's homes, children's garden, children's centers I encountered. And in many of those were buses, tourist groups, safari vehicles. And I started to wonder, why is that more and more orphanages are coming up as closer as I get to the tourist destinations. So I started to look this up, and what you see on the screen on the left is what I encountered in Kenya, that I was wondering whether there is, and it seems to be, a correlation between the location on orphanages and tourist hotspots or along roads leading to tourist destinations, which of course makes you wonder what the real motive is behind opening such orphanages, and it raises seriously concerns about as I said, the ethical motives. And I wondered if here really the commercial interest takes precedence over the best interest of the child. So on the left, you see Kenya, and it's the tourist road along the coast where you have all hotels, you have tourist facilities, and then you have all these orphanages that you see here on the left. Then I was thinking whether this is maybe just a coincidence, and this can maybe not be the same in many other countries, but then somehow on Facebook, I got recommended tourist destinations in Vietnam. And then it triggered the interest in me to maybe go again on Google Maps and see where the orphanages are in Vietnam. So, and what I saw is that they very much align with the tourist hotspots that you see, and I took the screenshot from the guidebook that you see on the right. So this was my first key finding. There seems to be a correlation between orphanage locations and tourist attractions. So then I started to dig deeper into the reviews that I found. And just as a heads up for the privacy of the children, I of course have made all of the photos unrecognizable. But it was deeply concerning to see and to witness how the names of orphanages, the address of the orphanages, the opening hours, as well as many other contact information are publicly disclosed. And this in combination with hundreds of pictures of children, and none of these pictures were made unrecognizable, so the complete identity was exposed to the public. And I think it goes without saying that this disclosure of highly sensitive information of highly vulnerable children puts them at severe risks, and also is a severe violation of their rights to privacy. And I just here on the slide, I have many more screenshots, but I just wanted to show a very small selection of reviews that I saw. And I also would like to draw your attention to the number of the reviews, which really range from 69 reviews up to 1,200 reviews for some orphanages. So I think we can probably understand the amount of people that are visiting and doing volunteer work in these orphanages. So then my next key finding is that these reviews also reviewed that children are treated as mere tourist attractions. For example, they are lined up in front of a display table so the tourists can come and have a look at them. And this is, for example, the review that you see on the left, where you have children lying on the table and you have a group of tourists coming in to look at these children. And this is, I think, without doubt, highly unethical. Then children are also treated as objects for entertainment, as a subject for relaxation, or to be used for photo opportunities. And I think you can see on the pictures that children have been asked to perform. You can see, of course, I don't know if she's a visitor or volunteer who takes selfies with the children. And like you can see on the review on the bottom right, someone suggests to go to an orphanage if you want to relax your mind from your busy schedule. Something that was new to me was also a new trend, that it seems to be a new thing to rent an orphanage for your anniversary, or for birthday parties, where kids are then coerced into performing for the guests. And this is, for example, the two reviews that you can see in the middle, where one is saying he has already been in the orphanage 3 times for a birthday party. And you can see in the top review that the person was very happy to see how good the children are trained in karate, yoga, classical music, and acting. And this was probably the most concerning part of the research, which deeply raised serious questions regarding the child safeguarding of the children residing at these homes. So, for example, as you can see in the middle, and again, of course, for the privacy of the child that was displaced here, I made it unrecognizable, also the addresses. Children have been completely exposed. You can see there's an address, there's the name of an orphanage, and there has been a child that was completely undressed. And this is in fact a video, so it is dancing in front of the camera. And I think this blunted exposure of children, coupled with the address, coupled with the name of the orphanage where he or she can be found, severely compromises the safety of the children and comprises him or her to all forms of exploitation, either online or offline. Then the reviews and the picture that you see on the left was shocking for me in the sense that volunteers and tourists seem to have complete unlimited access to children that is not even supervised by professional staff. Like you can see in the review, you can spend a few hours playing with children, you can teaching or doing or whatever you like. So that means there is no supervision, there is no control mechanism that would allow and ensure the safety of the children. And even worse, like you can see on the reviews on the right, and this I just picked 3 reviews because I couldn't go through thousands of reviews. These reviews are from 3 men that are using Google reviews to access girls and to acquire about the availability of orphan girls for marriage. So this was for me shocking. This is also what I have not seen before. It was for me the first time. But I think this really is enough evidence and should alert us to take immediate actions to protect the children that are placed in these residential care centers. So, and then in parallel to reviewing all these orphanages, I also wanted to better understand the marketing strategies of tour operators for orphanage tourism. And it really became evident that the benefits that these organizations list on their homepage cater to the volunteer needs, but not for the needs of the children. And I think that really reveals that beneath the surface of altruism lies the truth and the reality that orphanage volunteering is really about fulfilling the desires of the volunteers rather than helping the children themselves, which I think really sheds light on the true nature of orphanage volunteerism and orphanage tourism. And again, this is just an example of the reviews and the organizations that I looked at, but I think it says it all. Like you can see in the middle, orphanage tourism and volunteerism, it's a happiness booster. You can see health benefits listed, your skills will be improved, you get to travel, it's a new experience, you will learn something new, and there is nothing about that it will help the child that you go and pretend you want to help. It's all about the volunteer's personal validation and gratification. So, and then of course, there's always a question, except also, of course, for us in the OSCE, because most of the orphanages are outside our region, why we should work on this, especially because if this is outside our region and if it's not the country that has these orphanages should take action. Yes, of course, they should. Deinstitutionalization is a global process and there is a need across the world. But like Senator Reynolds from Australia said in the meeting last week at my webinar, we have created the problem, so we have the responsibility to solve it. And if I may end like with this LinkedIn research on a personal note, I myself have been a volunteer in an orphanage in South Africa, and I think there are many red flags that I maybe should have seen earlier. I saw them a bit later. I approached the management of the orphanage, whose response it was to ask me to leave and to not come back. I tried it again. I also tried to raise awareness among the volunteers who kept on arriving, but I had to stop it at one point because it became too risky. But I have seen firsthand, I have seen live how children who sometimes did not want to go out with the volunteers were forced to go out with the volunteer so that the volunteer gets his or her experience. I have seen how devastated children were when previous volunteers left, and then how excited they were when new volunteers arrived, just to be heartbroken again when they left. I have seen children who got visited by their parents, but the priest would not allow the children to be with their parents for the reason of the parents being too poor. So these have been all red flags, and there was clearly not an interest to address those from the management of the orphanage. So the research I conducted revealed many, many more child protection concerns and child protection issues. I have seen reviews of volunteers who have been very upset that the bonding session that was promised to them with a child did not take place. I have seen very upset reviews of volunteers that were promised to watch children eat, but then they already ate when they arrived. I have seen reviews of volunteers encouraging other volunteers to make sure to see the persons with disabilities in the basement. All of this has been very, very disturbing and shocking. And I think this is why I think what I've just still have on the screen, we have created the problem. We in our region, we have created the demand. So we have the responsibility to solve it. So what other activities are we doing except in outside the research that I just presented? We are right now in the middle of an event series in partnership with the Council of Baltic Sea States. And here we have two activities, one of which already took place this week. We had a webinar with very distinct speakers from across the world, including the World Childhood Foundation, Senator Reynolds from Australia, Dr. Kate van Dor from the University of Griffith, a survivor of orphanage trafficking from Kenya, and we focused on revealing the reality of orphanage volunteerism and tourism and highlighting best practices from countries that could be done to address this issue from a volunteer sending perspective country. And then next week, we will be at the workshop of the Council of Baltic Sea States in Stockholm, where we will conduct a workshop on the nexus between the institutionalization of children and child trafficking. Here, to a lesser extent, we will look at the problem of orphanage trafficking. We will probably more look into the issues of institutionalization of children in the Baltic Sea region, and to better understand the prevalence in the region and the policy response and the legal frameworks to address the risks of children in institutions, or like Irina said, the care levers, which I think it's still untapped field, and although those are most at risk. And then our planned activities that we are currently planning. We are trying to do more advocacy and engagement with parliamentarians, in particular to promote, if I may say, the fantastic resolution from the Interparliamentarian Union on orphanage trafficking, the role of parliamentarians in reducing harm. We were in fact planning a meeting with the UK Parliament next week, but I think for those who know, the elections came in our way, so we had to postpone the meeting to a later date. And then we also hope that we can trigger interest among other countries to help us meeting parliamentarians to really take more action here. And then another initiative that we are planning, this is closely related, is we want to conduct regional workshop to better understand and address the vulnerabilities among persons with disabilities, minority groups, and also children, where again we will focus on children in the context of institutionalization. And this was my last slide. Thank you so much, Fiaca, for giving me the floor, and I look forward to the questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Katerina, for a really powerful presentation. It was really, I think, that was kind of bringing everything back together, especially for those of us who are really looking at the question of volunteering, and we're getting such a good idea of how, I suppose, how all those different pieces are connected. You know, what Irina is talking about in terms of, you know, EU anti-child trafficking directives, what JP is talking about the reality in Ireland, and what you're talking about, like how it's all interlinked and connected. So I'm going to put the spotlight back on the other speakers now, and we've had a few questions come in, so we're just going to take maybe 5 minutes just to address some of those questions. So the first one was about data collection, and I know in particular Irina and JP touched on that in different ways in terms of the, I suppose, the problems with the data we have, and apologies here now, I'm a slight technical issue, problems with some of the data we have and the issues in terms of collecting it. So the question was about best practice. So maybe I'll go to Irina first, and then JP if you've anything to add, and then Katerina, you're welcome to come in as well. But just, you know, are there any examples of good practice in relation to the collection of, you know, anonymized statistical data around child trafficking?
Thank you. Unfortunately, I'm not able to answer this question. One thing is I'm not aware of such practices, and then the other is I'm not a researcher myself. But in saying that we might look into addressing data, I meant it from advocacy perspective, and then if we start looking into this with other organizations in the countries, looking at the implementation, we will then perhaps also come up with good practices and approaches.
Great, thank you very much. And then JP, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add.
Just, I suppose, just Ireland specific, Fiacra, I'd love to say there is an example of best practice. Unfortunately, there isn't. We're very challenged in the state about how we initially, I suppose, captured the data around child trafficking, and subsequently how it's shared. I know there are efforts underway to revise or reform how we capture that data, but at present, unfortunately, we don't have an example I could point to.
Good. And maybe just to follow on that quickly, JP, I suppose you mentioned in terms of the UK had the figures in terms of the the number of children recorded as being trafficked are so much higher. Is there like what is the different context in terms of how that's being tracked?
So I think the initial piece, Fikra, is really around identification. And there are clearer parameters for frontline professionals on how to identify and how to refer children to the national referral mechanism. Here in Ireland, unfortunately, we don't have that education piece as widely available as we should or would like to have. So at present, just to speak on maybe the children who are being trafficked for criminal exploitation are being moved around and through justice programs for children and are not being clearly identified as those child victims. We're looking at the presenting behaviours in children, similarly with the sexual exploitation pieces, but we're not looking at the vulnerability, we're not looking at the targeting, and we're missing that victimhood piece. So the data has not been captured around those pieces, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely.
I may add, Fiacre.
Yeah.
I mean, just what just comes to my mind quickly. I mean, I know, for example, that Disability Rights International, Human Rights Watch, but also UNICEF has collected some data of the exploitation of children with disabilities in institution. Then there is the World Childhood Foundation from Sweden that has also collected some data in selected countries on the sexual exploitation of children in institutions. And two countries actually come to my mind right now where there were government inquiries in relation to the exploitation of children in institution. Of course, this is not exclusively linked to trafficking, it's around sexual exploitation and abuse. And I'm aware of the one in the UK, and then there has been a big one also in Australia.
Great. Well, thanks very much. And then there's a question here about kind of this question with volunteers. What people sometimes say, oh, we can't go to an orphanage, and the question we get asked is recommendations, what volunteers should do instead. And yeah, I suppose maybe going to yourself first, Katharina, would you have a message or a response to kind of a question like that?
In fact, I presented to students where I tried to raise awareness among the students to not go to orphanages and to volunteer in those because I spoke about the harmful impact. And the question that I got back from the student was how they can distinguish between a good orphanage and a bad orphanage. And I think such thing as a good orphanage doesn't exist. And also, what added value do you think you bring for 2 weeks to the life of this child rather than your own benefit? However, of course, volunteering, it is something excellent to do. We do not want young people to volunteer. Of course, I think we should encourage young people to volunteer, but there are many volunteer opportunities in your own country. There are many other volunteer opportunities that do not require direct engagement with children. Of course, we all understand there is this excitement and to be directly exposed to children. But I think if you really want to help the children, you should divert your volunteering experience to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah, and then just a question for you, Irina, perhaps, is just about, I suppose, the European Union and I suppose the ascension process for the countries that have joined, say, since 2004 in particular. And do you have anything, I suppose, has the European Union and the institutions been important in kind of promoting care reform and I suppose pushing for the closing down of institutions, particularly in some of the countries that joined the EU in the past 20 years?
Sorry, definitely the EU has played a crucial role in supporting the transition from institutional to community-based care, as they call it, in its member states. And this goes back to 2013, at the end of 2013, when this process, care reform or or the transition from institutional to community based care was for the first time introduced in the EU internal funding regulations with an ex ante conditionality, which in effect made member states consider supporting the transition, and it was clear that they should not use the EU funds for the construction of or maintenance of like orphanages, like institutions. So this was the first step, but it is now for a second like programming cycle that this has been transferred again and preserved and further strengthened for the EU the EU internal funding with an enabling condition stating the same, but also including a lot more and more like regular good monitoring of the implementation. Then for the current programming period, for the first time ever, the transition was also included in the two main regulations governing the EU external funding. This is not obligatory for the partner countries, but nevertheless, it gives visibility to the process, and also encourages them to invest in the transition, in effect closure of the institutions and the creation of wide variety of services. And with this we move to like right now where care reform is included in all key EU policy instruments. It's everywhere, but it was not the case in 2030 when we started this advocacy effort, which led to all the rest. And the EU has been a great partner to the civil society sector in that.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And just a final question to wrap up, and maybe if each of you just have a sentence or two to say on it, which is, and again, coming from your own perspective in the area you've been focusing on. So yeah, what do you think is the first step that participants in this webinar could take towards, to use your words, Katerina, in terms of sorting the problem that we have created? So perhaps maybe we can go to yourself, Katerina, first and work our way around.
For me, it's the topic of awareness raising among young students. I mean, we can do a lot of policy work, strategic work, which is fantastic, and it should happen, like the code of conduct that many tourist organizations are working on. But at the end, we need to address the demand side. And the demand side comes from the volunteers that are interested to do something good. And this is what it makes so difficult. All the volunteers that you meet seriously think they do something good while they create harm. And for me personally, it took me a long time to realize that I was only in this orphanage so that the children are there. It was not the other way around. The children were only there so that I can be there. It was not the other way around. So we need to do much more awareness raising. And if I could have one call to all of those involved, I presented the IPU resolution, and I would really like to partner with many of you to bring parliamentarians together and see how parliamentarians can take action to address this topic at national level.
Thank you. And just there's a question there. Is your LinkedIn research, are the findings available as a report or are they compiled anywhere?
No, I have them only on my LinkedIn profile.
Okay, perfect.
But I will do more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if anyone wants to check out Katerina's LinkedIn, there's some great kind of research shared already, and it's really fascinating. So thank you very much. And then maybe JP, if we could ask you the same question.
Similar to Katarina, I think it's about awareness raising. It's about being more mindful of all of the actions that we do take daily and how they impact on other people, and particularly on children. I'd encourage people, maybe as a takeaway piece from this afternoon session, to have a conversation with somebody else about what you've heard this afternoon. To set yourself a goal, maybe to seek out some additional information online, some resources, because we're all, as Katarina said, we're responsible for this, so we do have the responsibility to come up with a solution for the children.
Great. Thank you very much, JP. And Irina.
We're now working on a statement on the revised directive, which will hopefully be shaped and endorsed by all the partners with whom we have done this piece of advocacy, and if you are interested to also support us with this and stay tuned on the forthcoming advocacy linked to the implementation of the directive, please reach out to me.
Thank you very much. So we're just about out of time. So I want to thank our speakers. That was really powerful, really fantastic, informative. This has been recorded and it'll be available very soon for everyone. So I did say we kind of wrap up with a call to action, and that's if what you've heard today has kind of inspired you and you want to learn more about it, absolutely check out many of those resources that have been shared in the chat. A good starting point is the Comhlámh website, but also make sure to check out the OSCE, check out MECPATS, check out Hope and Home for Children. I will send you a huge amount of information as well. But there is a pledge that individuals are invited to sign. That's a pledge not to visit or volunteer in an orphanage. But also, as our speakers kind of said, to raise awareness among your friends, your families, your communities, get involved in advocacy in whatever way you can. So I put the link in there. And like I said, I will share it to all the participants as well. The other thing just to say as well is that as a result of the advocacy of the End Orphanage volunteering campaign and other groups, the Department of Foreign Affairs in Ireland have updated their travel advice, very clearly advising that no one from Ireland should, under any circumstance, visit or volunteer in an orphanage. And that's very clear advice that's coming from the Irish government, and it's absolutely very important that people follow the advice of the government when it comes to travel situations such as that. So I've put that link in as well, and that's something to take away with you. But please do check out the pledge if you're in the position to sign it, or perhaps you're an organisation that would like to get behind the campaign. We're always looking for new endorsers as well. So as I said, thank you to the speakers, thank you to the Communicating Europe initiative for their funding of this event, and thank you, of course, to Irish Aid for their ongoing support of our efforts. So I'll stop the recording. We'll leave it there. Please do get in contact with any of us. My email is fiacre@comhlámh.org. I'll be in touch very soon with all the information. But we'll leave it there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.